not the banner weekend for the SEC and their basketball programs. Ugh. What was the final record for the SEC, Caleb?
Oh, I don't know the exact final record. Let me look that up, but I know half of them lost.
How many of the teams lost? How many of the teams are still alive?
I think just Alabama and Tennessee are still alive. That's it.
Yeah. Obviously,
Kentucky was a very easy draw.
Yeah, Kentucky was the big one that got knocked out, and I think a lot of people thought that they were their best basketball was ahead of them, this particular team. But I'll ask you, is the fact that the SEC has struggled in the NCAA tournament, is that embarrassing for the SEC? Caleb, what are your thoughts?
So the SEC specifically, I don't put too much stock into conference performance in postseason. I never did in bowl games. Remember back in the day before the playoff when everybody was like, I want my conference teams to win all the time. I didn't care. Okay. Like what? Oh, wow. The SEC went 7-3 in bowl games. That really says something, or 4-6, or who cares? It was bowl games. Okay. The tournament obviously there's more to play for. So I get it. But the way it's structured and set up is just designed for fluke freak things to happen every year. And so it's just so not indicative of a season. And I've never thought it was indicative of a season. So I don't put too much stock on it from that perspective.
There's a however or a but. There you go.
But I put a lot of stock on it from the idiocy dribble that Greg Sankey spewed 2 weeks ago heading into the tournament.
Which was?
He touted these lower level teams that were bubble teams that were upsetting or playing these better teams close and said, this is proof that we should have more bids basically for power conferences in the NCAA tournament and take them away from auto conferences. Well, no, that's not proof, Greg. Okay? Because just because a team plays a team close does not mean they deserve to go to the NCAA tournament. And this proves that. You made that case, Greg, to say that there should be more SEC teams in the NCAA tournament instead of these smaller level teams, to point out it would make for better basketball. And then you'll watch Kentucky play Oakland. You really see that game and go, you know what really could have fixed this tournament? Having another SEC team in there. That wouldn't have done that. That's what people wanted to see.
Poll question up now. Do you root for the SEC when your team isn't playing? Yes, conference pride. No, they're dead to me. Here's why Caleb's wrong in everything he just said. And it sounded good, and it was an impassioned plea, and that was impressive, but he was just absolutely wrong in everything he said. And I'm going to tell you why. First, I want to tell you about Boundless Moving. From their 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations, they have you covered. That's Boundless Moving. That's who I used. They're in Charlotte, also in East Tennessee. Basketball's a toy for the SEC. Greg Sankey can float that balloon out there, which, by the way, let's be honest, everybody has backed off expanding the tournament. That was a balloon floated out there by Sankey and some other people, leaked just to find out what the public would say. And the public would say, heck no, that's too long. That's what they said. So that's all he did. He floated it out there. It wasn't his fault. When you have a toy in an adolescent sense, you can ram that little Porsche against the wall if you want to. When you have a toy in terms of a big boy sense, you don't ram your real Porsche into the wall for funsies. That's what football is. So whatever he does with basketball, I think is to some extent just casting a line to see what he can pull back in to make it a bigger sport. I think that's what he said when he said that about the NCAA tournament expansion. I think though he was ready and willing for everybody to come back and say, no, that's a bad idea. He just threw that out there. I don't think he was ever serious at all.
The reason I break from you, it's not like Greg Sankey thinks from what the public wants ever, okay? This guy was the most instrumental in getting the 12-team playoff, and before we even got started with that, he went back and said, hey, how about a 14-team playoff? And now they're doing it, even though every fan was like, wait, we don't want that. Two, I never listen to what the public wants because the public is so short-sighted. This same public that begged for an expanded college football playoff for years is now mad that they want to expand more. I'm like, guys, this is what did you think was going to happen? The minute
that's apples and oranges. I mean, that's like saying, oh, I like my my chicken fried and I like my steak grilled. Those are two. I mean, basketball and football are two completely separate things.
What I'm saying is Greg Sankey doesn't take the public into account. He takes money into account. He loves him some money. And, I will say football fields are green, which is the color of money, and basketball courts are not green. And so all I'm saying is that he floated that because of the unit payouts for SEC teams in the NCAA tournament.
No doubt.
And which is...
You want to explain the unit payouts that they get for those that don't know?
A conference gets $2 million for every single NCAA tournament game one of its representatives plays on.
Right.
And there are a potential of 135 units in a season, or in a tournament, an NCAA tournament. So you want as many teams in there as possible. He wants more of those units for the SEC. Now, again, it's short-sighted. He is losing, and college basketball will hemorrhage an entire collection of fans across the country by doing this, the same way college football has, by the way, and is going to in the future. College basketball would hemorrhage that too, because half of March Madness, half of its draw is people who would never even watch the sport but have fun seeing these smaller schools go far. If you just put all the good teams in the tournament, or the power conference teams, the fans of those power conference teams would never watch the regular season because they know their team's going to the tournament, so really, who cares? And the average casual fan wouldn't come during March. And this is the flaw of what he proposed, and he looks ridiculous for what happened over the weekend after he proposed that.
I think he just floated a balloon up there. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I don't think this was anything serious. And I'm going to go back to the very point you started your argument with, and that is you usually don't place too much in one tournament because there can be a bad run of draws. I mean, what's the SEC record been like over the past 10 years? Again, I'll say this. If you want to fix it, you can. This is why it's a toy and not a real toy. It's a toy Porsche, not a real Porsche. If Tennessee wanted to fix this, they'd wait for the ACC to break up and go for my very unorthodox move of adding Duke and North Carolina. Then they'd be a basketball school and they could control basketball like they control football. But they're not going to do that. Why? Because they don't care. It all comes down to money. More money comes in from football by far, about 5 times the amount than comes in from basketball. So this
that gap's
me,
probably bigger in the SEC, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's testing this stuff out for logistics purposes to see if he can move a football team from one side of the country to another. When the SEC talks basketball, I just, in my mind, kind of shake my head just like I would if I were in the ACC and they were talking football. Like, maybe we need to watch what the SEC's doing. And the SEC's like, maybe we need to watch what the ACC's doing in basketball. So I don't take a lot into account when Greg Sankey talks about basketball because he's ultimately going to be judged on what he does in football and football alone, right?
Yes, I agree with that. And it's funny you say that. The ACC talks football too. They just can't compete in football, but they realize football is their cash cow, which is why if they lose Clemson and Florida State, they're not surviving. Because not like they can sit there and be like, well, we got all the basketball schools, guys. It's like, yeah, ESPN's going to be like, yeah, we gave you that contract because we wanted the football schools. And so I will give you that. I think it's dangerous that he floated it because because I'm not putting it past him to do it. And by the way, guys, with this power conference, it's going to happen. I don't think the SEC should exist in 5 years. Neither should the Big Ten. I don't think these conferences have any need to exist 5 years
down the road. I like the fact, I'm going to go nostalgia guy. I like the fact that there are conferences, but need or not, want or not by Dave Hooker, that is going to be the case in 5 years. No
Dave,
matter
I'm
what
with you.
Want or what I need.
Yeah, I like the fact that there are conferences too. I want to go back to 1990 where you had like 10 teams to a conference. Okay, I want the old SEC. Kick out Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and South Carolina. I want them all gone. Okay, I want the old 10-team SEC, the old Southwest, the old Big Eight. I want all that back. But in this new age of super mega conferences, eventually there's no point of them. Just like baseball, and baseball eventually had to realize, and it took till what 1997 before they realized, hey, why do these leagues operate independently of each other? We're all under the Major League Baseball umbrella. Why are we out here like pretending we're separate? Okay, so
I mean, they're still practically doing that, which is why one of the many reasons why the NFL surpassed them long ago. I mean, the top 3 sports in the 1950s were what? Boxing, horse racing, and Major League Baseball.
Yeah, no, that's true. You are right. Exactly. Baseball is trying to, you have to go, whatever you do, I do believe in this. Whichever way you decide to go, you have to go all in on it, right? So you can either be like 1990 and have everything separated, have college football hyper regional, the way I want it, or you can go the mega conferences route. But if you go the mega conferences route, then you shouldn't have the conferences. You should just have one mega conference and have that be the league, and they're all independent and they all play each other. And
yeah, I mean, but don't you want to hear the SEC? Don't you? I mean,
no,
don't you?
not anymore.
That doesn't
What
do
with Arkansas and Texas and
okay, but what if it's
Oklahoma
what if
and
it's
Missouri?
analogous to the NFC? Like I have some NFC East pride. Now I don't root for their teams if they move forward, but I like it when the NFC East is better. I know that may sound stupid to you,
How many
but
teams are in the NFC East, Dave?
therefore.
Yes. Okay, you're talking about that versus the what if the NFC East went and gobbled up the NFC South in the AFC West? Okay, and then what are you gonna say?
Oh, that cold.
All I'm saying is one, and you still the SEC East pride. You got to remember this. Part of the SEC pride was it was a uniting thing behind with college athletics in general. It was it was so hyper regional. Okay, you know this, Dave. Recruiting. Most recruiting until the 1990s was local, right? Outside of Notre Dame, everybody recruited local. And so recruiting was local. So the success of programs and conferences was really reflective on where you lived. So you actually took massive regional pride because it was just kind of a representation of where you lived in your culture and your life. And not just the SEC, but the Big Ten, the Pac-12, the Northeast, like all these cultural parts of the country that's what the bowls were for, to create that fun. That doesn't exist anymore. Like, I'm sorry, but people, I mean, I have to explain this to people up north a lot of times, but Tennessee shares nothing culturally in common with Texas. Okay? Like, Knoxville and Austin are not the same.
No, I agree that it doesn't feel like the air quotes South to me, but they're a lot closer than, say, California.
Right. Okay, but then let's go to the Big Ten.
Not geographically, just mindset.
Now, tell me what USC and Ohio State share culturally.
Oh, well, I'm not arguing that one. No, I mean, no, you're right. I mean, they have nothing culturally. That was a very odd move, but it's because the Pac-12 couldn't get off its duff to put something together that they could present to a network in terms of a 14-team playoff, because that's where they are now. I mean, the ACC was locked into the contract. The Pac-12 wasn't aggressive enough, so the Big Ten swooped in and made the first major move in shaking things up. That's not the Big Ten's fault.
No, I'm not blaming the Big Ten. What I'm saying is, in general, once that happened, once you went down that road, and the SEC started it, by the way, they started it when they added Missouri. Well, Maryland started it, or the Big Ten did it with adding Maryland and Rutgers, which have nothing in common culturally with the Big Ten. But the SEC went down the rabbit hole too. And actually, the SEC did it first, and then the Big Ten. So the SEC did start it with Missouri. When you focused on TV markets and then brand size and revenue power, you can't then sit there and say, let's have some cultural pride in what we do. There is no such thing as that, or regional pride. It's dead. These conferences shouldn't exist. Okay. I'm if you're a Tennessee fan, you don't see, like, I'm sorry, Alabama's national championship is not your national championship.
No.
Okay.
And it helps their rivals recruit. I understand that. Somebody put that on the message board. To me, it's all about people. I didn't want to see Nate Oates win.
That's
Yeah,
how I was too.
What's that?
That's how I am too. With
Yeah.
Nate Oates.
I'm just about people in general. I didn't really want to see Nate Oates win. I think it was better drama if John Calipari lost early. So at the end of that game, I was rooting more for content. But no, we can get into that debate one day about whether or not you should root for your SEC brethren. But the simple fact in football is that it helps you in recruiting immensely to have a monstrous win streak over one of your rivals. We've seen it before.
Yes, not for a conference to be dominant over another conference, though. Okay, the SEC dominated college football from 2000. They won every national title from 2006 to 2012. Want to know who didn't win a national title in that time? Tennessee. Didn't help them at all.
Yeah. Show represented by Banks & Jones. Apex Apparel Group Design call to action is this. 15% off your first order. How awesome is that? Call Tyler. 865-919-3001. 865-919-3001. I am telling you that they have just about everything you could imagine in terms of promo material for your business. They've got the spirit wear too. They've got it all right there at Apex Apparel. Go to yourapexapparel.com, just down below, yourapexapparel.com, or just call Tyler, 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001. We kind of headed this in one direction and got away from it. Should Greg Sankey be embarrassed over the SEC's tournament failures? And they've been bad. I say absolutely not, because I think it's a little bitty toy. Now, if the SEC started going 0-8 in college football playoff games, I think you've got a problem. But I don't believe that's going to happen. Neither do you. This is a toy for the SEC. This is not the main business they run on a day-to-day basis.
I think he still should be embarrassed because of how he floated it, and because I don't think he has all of his ducks in a row. And I'm just going to say that with the ACC or the SEC. This is it. In 2 weeks, he floated that, quickly went to the 14-team playoff, where it's clear that he hasn't ironed out the details yet. And also, let's not forget, put in that 8-game schedule for 2025 when we know that's not even staying because he clearly wants 9. So I don't think Greg Sankey has any ducks in a row right now.
You know, in his defense, it's a really hard time to line up ducks. I mean, with all that's changing, to defend him for just a second, you know, there have been times in college football history when it wasn't that hard to line up ducks. But right now, those ducks are running all over the place. They're getting money from people. They're going to other duck universities. I mean, I think you should probably cut him some slack, just a little bit.
He's part of the reason it's impossible to get ducks in a row. He has scrambled the ducks more than anybody.
It's like ducks on stimulants. They're running all over the place.